We need to go to the University of Georgia, as they are also on a heater here in recruiting. Stop me if you've heard this before. Kirby Smart's one of the best recruiters in the country. Oh, I don't think me and you have ever said that on this show before, that Kirby Smart's an elite recruiter. But regardless, the number 2 overall class per On3 is the Georgia Bulldogs, led by Kirby Smart. Your thoughts on the continued dominance by Kirby and staff and what they've been doing?
They've had a supremely dominant stretch over the last few weeks. The month of June was incredibly fruitful, and it played exactly to the tone, the roster building approach that Kirby Smart has always done. If I told you that they grabbed a bunch of defensive linemen and defensive backs and, a linebacker here, a running back there, if I told you that without naming any names, you'd probably nod and go, yeah, that sounds about right. That's how Kirby's built this thing. I think that what is so important to emphasize, them grabbing as many 4-star or higher, highly rated players to boost the depth of their defense is what has made them so elite. And this class, the way that it's building up with guys like James Johnson and Pierre Dean that they added, Kamari Brooks, there is just enough talented depth to continue to do what they do at a very high level, which is be able to rotate different bodies for different situations and to be able to have the freshest legs in the conference. So many teams try to steal this approach, and so many fail at finding enough guys that can get onto the field and can crack the rotation. And I am also would like to call out one guy specifically that I'm really intrigued by. Getting Minkah Fitzpatrick's little brother, Justice Fitzpatrick, is just an awesome underrated piece to all of this. And that is like one other guy that I think needs to be talked about. That's kind of the crown, not the crown jewel, but like one of the key promising pieces.
Who was Minkah Fitzpatrick's DC?
Gee, I wonder who.
Look, it's
maybe
not
Kirby.
Maybe Kirby Smart. It's not just the 26 class that you bring up here. Joe, they also got 2 commits in the 2027 class. They go out to Long Beach, California, and get Dante Wright, a 6'2", 180-pound corner. They go and get Gavin Honore out of California as well, a wide receiver. And listen, when you talk about recruiting and you talk about why teams continue to have dominance, we talked about who I forget the team we specific. I think it was Michigan that we were talking about on Monday. Joe, the difference is that Kirby's just been doing this, right? Like Kirby has just always built himself from up front in his recruiting classes. Now, you do talk about 2026, and I don't talk about 2027 or years before. Joe, they went out and made a statement in getting Jared Curtis, right? Like it was something that Georgia had not necessarily done, going and getting the number 1 overall quarterback in the country, the number 1 top 10 kid in Jared Curtis. But they go out and get Agboko, the big offensive tackle from North Carolina. They went and got Jordan Smith. And that, I know that was in May. But you talk about Justice Fitzpatrick. You talk about James Johnson. You talk about these guys that they're hitting on. Joe, I read this to you like we did with Michigan. Outside of Jared Curtis, you have an offensive tackle, safety, corner, D-line, corner, safety, D-line, corner, running back, edge, corner, linebacker, tight end, D-line, corner, edge. That is, again, it's the most Kirby thing of all time. Joe, there was one thing that Kirby said that stuck out to me about a month and a half ago when he was talking about the portal and recruiting. It was during spring ball, if you remember. We talked about it a little bit on the show. Kirby came out and said, I want guys that love football. Maybe not the typical all 5-star class that we see always from Kirby. I want kids that love football and are about what Georgia is about. These kids just so happen to be highly talented in that too. I will say that the Georgia class of 2027 is also elite. And I think that there comes a place where you sacrifice some things in 26 to go for 27. Mm-hmm. Regardless of that, Joe, it's like compounding interest with what they do defensively. The more they keep stacking, the more that they're going to do it. You better be glad that some of you, Ole Miss included, got to Georgia this past year. It's not going to continue to happen when you recruit like this. It does not exist. Congratulations, you got them last year to the 3 teams that beat them. It will not last. I promise you it will not last. And when you recruit like this is how you can sustain natties. I will remind people, after Nick got his second national title, it took him a second to, I don't want to say rebuild, but to get that third one at Bama, it took him a little bit to reload. I do feel like that's what's happening with Kirby here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of getting back to the roots of the roster building approach that's built them the most success. I don't think it got away from them at any point, but the last 2 teams they had, there was a lot of inconsistency, and there was not a lot of total reliability from their offensive lines, their defensive lines.
Yep.
I will say one thing that's always really funny when we see these commitments from recruits is seeing what the national response is, seeing what other fan bases are responding to. And I kind of laugh at some of these other fan bases trying to maybe even downplay the quality of this class and the way this class looks. And then also some folks just chiming in being like, why do they need so many defensive linemen? Like this is unnecessary. Why would you build a roster like this? Why would you question Kirby Smart's approach that he's been doing for this long? And to what you brought up a second ago, finding the guys that are the most committed. If they wanted to just sign the most 5 stars, they would have put together that same class that Jimbo did a couple of years ago, where all those guys left and they transferred to a million different places. Mm-hmm. He is going with the players that he knows that he can get the most out of and that can play specific roles for the different fronts that they like to align in to create havoc. If you have the best and the deepest defensive lines in the country, you are going to be the best teams. We talk about this on a week-to-week basis. It is the easiest indicator for finding if a team is going to win a national title or at least finish in the top 5. Do they have a deep offensive line? Do they have a deep defensive line? Texas answers that question. Alabama's getting back to that. Notre Dame has been to that degree. Oregon has been to that degree. Ohio State was last year. The same culprits every single time, yet sometimes we still have to question it.
Can I throw one thing out there to you?
Go ahead.
Alabama did go into the state of Georgia and get the 2 top kids in the state. So
True.
I'm not – and then A&M went in there and got Tristan Givens. Now, Tyler Atkinson, okay, the linebacker out of Loganville, Georgia, is also on the board. A lot of people believe a guy that's in the top 20s is going to the University of Georgia and will commit there. For the longest time, he was the number 1 player in the state. I just want to, because I know Bama fans and they love to come and hear about recruiting, I will point out that Bama did go in there and get Xavier Griffin. They did go in there and get Edmonds. I wonder if Georgia flips them at any point. I would assume that this battle's not over, and I'm never going to doubt Kirby Smart when it comes to recruiting. So to Bama fans that will come in here, do not act as if that Kirby is going to give up here and that he can't flip some of these kids.
Yeah, that is one of the oddest parts about this is that there's currently 4 5 stars on the On3 industry rankings, and none of them committed to Georgia. Now, Atkinson, from what I had been reading and keeping up with, it seems like he's probably going to end up with Georgia. That's no sourcing. It's just purely off of me reading articles and listening to podcasts. And then Protho seems like he's a pretty heavy lean for them to get. So those are 2 guys, 2 5 stars that aren't even committed, that are leaning in that direction. I think the way that we cap this off is by pointing out they're currently number 2 because they've got a lot of names. They will always, on signing day, be a team that finishes aggressively strong.
No doubt.
If they finish with the number 1 class, I would not be stunned, especially over USC, which like USC's done some great things. There's a chance that they kind of even out a little bit as all these other classes start to add some bigger names and some of these bigger names start to commit. Georgia finishing number 1 is 1,000% on the table and should not be something that we would be surprised by.
Joe, they got 7 top 100 recruits. And people are like, well, you didn't get the 5-star. 7 top 100 recruits. Calm down. And by the way, if Atkinson does commit, that's 8. Joe, he literally almost built an entire defense by going out there and getting top 100 dudes. I mean,
right.
That's
right.
I'm sorry. That's just so dumb. That's insane.
It'll end up being an elite class.
Yes.
Again, there is such a strong chance that they end up finishing number one. It feels like we're moving in that direction.
We'll see. They got to make a couple of flips here. You got to get some. If you're going to get the number one class, you got to make some flips. And look, do they go in and get a receiver for Jared Curtis? Do they go and get another tackle or guard that they can flip at the end here? I will remind everybody in the University of Georgia, just what happened to you last year with Dylan Raiola can happen for you in the sense of you flipping somebody big there at the end. So Georgia on an absolute heater when it comes to recruiting. I feel like that's just like, I don't even know why we're saying it at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of inevitable.